No, I was just in the middle of posting to tell people where I am and what I am doing. I made the executive decision to to hook up the keyboard but not the mouse. And I noticed that once again, my stupid camera, the nice one that I'd have to plug in, um, train, um, was picking up the glare from my glasses though. Jeez. I wish I had no glare glasses. We're picking up the glare from the lamp, the light up above my head. So I was gonna try I was gonna try and find a light shade of some kind to cover up the glare. However, I was not finding one that would work, but I did find clip-on light. So I clipped it on and I turned it up and boop a doop, it goes there. You mean it's broken? Hi, Cozy. What again? That's annoying. Very annoying. Did you already announce me? Should I go and announce me? I can announce me. That's not a problem. Give me a sec. I want to apologize in advance. My housemates are being a little loud, so you might hear them muffle in the background. I just did. Oh my goodness. He's a Ari. Hello, Ari. How are you doing, darling? Everybody's popping in today. That's great. I love that. I love that for me. No, not estoy. Jeez Louise. Sorry for the quiet. Doing doing all the things. I need to update that. I need to remove stream elements because, fucking stream elements. Kind of regretting me 6 now because it's been breaking. Did we add me 6? Did I add me 6? I don't remember. It's been a second since I played with server stuff. Oh, that makes sense. Okay. Where else do I promo? Where else should I promo? Lots of stuff. So yeah, put the light in. The quality of light is a purple tint. I wonder if that has a grow light in it. I'm not mad if it does. I think it's perfectly acceptable light choice. Oh, Moog is in a reading party or watch party. They're watching One Piece. That's fun. I've never personally seen One Piece. I've heard good things about it. Not typically my cup of tea in terms of like content, but I'm willing to give things a try every so often if I'm feeling up to the challenge. I found some pretty good stuff that way in the past. How's everybody doing? I just got done working 2 8-hour shifts back to back. Perfectly acceptable amount of time, obviously. Um, but my body is not used to doing that kind of physical activity. So I am sore. I am sore in many a way. Um, so many sore. Um, come on, brain, you can do it. Okay, I think I've posted all of the things everywhere I can think of. I really hope I'm not about to cut into the time that Neff normally streams. So I'm gonna go check the board real quick. What day is it today? 22nd. Okay, doesn't look like Neff is streaming today. Today is an off day. Probably still busy doing Neff things, perfectly understandable. We love a self-care girly. So yeah, getting back to me. Um, Working 2 days in a row, very physical work, was not am not ex body is not used to such activity. My leaderboard gave me top click, unless it's about somebody else's stream, which it might be. Um, Golly jeez, I had how many new followers the last few days? Roxy Burnsy followed me, for good reason. We'll talk about that in a sec. Golfing Guy 1 followed me. Jeff D94 followed me. And Damn It Dale 39 followed me. Thanks to all of those people who followed me if you're watching the VOD later. And Jad underscore O2 7 days ago, which I might have missed mentioning before. Um, and if I did, now you have one. Uh, so let me talk about Roxy Burnsy and give a little story time about that. Just want to make sure. Okay. Just want to make sure that if I have any redeems, I can see when they pop up. That's one of the things that I can't really do without multiple browsers open. And when I start to multiple windows open. And when I start doing that, the laptop starts to get mad. So I'm going to put that up so if anything pops up, I can see it. Any of you who have channel points and are just sitting on them and hoarding them like little goblins, feel free to, occasionally put a redeem in. There are some redeems in there that might be fun for you. I am your puppet. I am happy to do your bidding on occasion, hence the redeems. And I'm also very willing to add redeems if I find them to be worth adding, like things I'm willing to do. Um, Seems really fun ones. And whenever possible, I try and steal them like the terrible little plagiarist that I am. It's one of the few forms of plagiarism that I support, stealing fun redeems from other people. If I had a plushie mascot like Alan, I absolutely would do a flip redeem that Alan does with Bill. Because I find it absolutely adorable. Typically, Alan does not spend a whole lot of time as a face cam guy. He's mostly Bill is the focus on the camera, and then there's little emoji, little PNG tuber, Bill, usually hanging up in about this very ish vicinity, chilling and hanging out. I love his setup. It's great. And he also does the Floaty Ducks background to most of his streams. which I also find great. I'm trying to this brain cell redeem would also be yours. We make that joke all the time. Yes, because I might have been the originator of that. I'm almost positive I was the originator of that. Um, and I think it might have been because of we were talking about the whole X times a day um, linking to specific redeems through bot redeems because I was doing it for Charlie. Uh, rest in peace, my boy. Um, all of the verbal pauses still need to work on that. So yeah, going back to what I was discussing before I got distracted by talking about redeems. So I want to say maybe 2 or 3 days ago, pre work stuff. Like I think it was on Monday because I worked Tuesday, Wednesday, right? I think that's right. I'm pretty sure that's right. I don't want to look at my schedule right now because then I have to pull up all of my stuff on my phone, and I need my phone right now for routine shit so I can pay attention. I was doing house chores, I think, and I decided to take a break because I had been doing it for a little bit, and I was getting tired, and I told myself it's time for a break. It's very important to remember to listen to your body, especially when you're doing very high exertion activities. If your body says, "Hey, I need a break," then you should probably take a break. That means sitting down. That means getting a snack. That means taking a sippy. Very important things to do. And I think a lot of people, when they start, especially more specifically, neurodivergent people have a tendency to be like, I have to finish the thing because if I don't finish the thing, then I don't get the happy chemicals. So I have to finish the thing. And then they forget that um, the body says no. And they push themselves through doing the thing and end up hurting themselves in the process. That is so loud. I'm so sorry. There's some ASMR for you if you were listening. Um, because sometimes I think it's especially specifically for me. I can't speak for everybody. I am not the spokesman for the neurodivergent. Spokesman? Spokesperson. Spokes cryptid of the neurodivergent community. I know with me, when I get the energy to do something, I have to immediately pick something and do it because that energy is a limited time offer. I need to use it up or it will go away. So I when I get those sudden bursts of energy, I am specifically and very urgently trying to use it and do something productive that maybe I've been putting off. I will sometimes get them when I'm really frustrated or uh, nervous, like I have a lot of pent up energy I don't know what to do with. So I decide, hey, maybe I should go do something that I've been putting off or smokes person. Uh, rawr. That was inappropriate. Sometimes, though, those bursts of energy come because I've had a lot of pent up energy. So I use the pent up energy doing something. And I think I was mad or something about whatever. I really wish I could remember. Probably good that I don't remember, to be honest. And what are you just goofing? Oh, I see. I see. Okay. Okay. You just let me just make sure that there's emphasis there. So I use the energy to work on my kitchen. Very specifically, my spouse is coming back from Arizona with a bunch of our stuff. All of our stuff, if I understand correctly, that has been in storage this whole time. A lot of things that we needed to get here. This will save us the expense of paying for storage in Phoenix. shouldn't have said that. Whatever. So getting that stuff sorted out is great. We're very glad. Uh, we're gonna Whether or not we get everything into the house is a separate issue, but we're gonna conquer that when we get there. Part of the reason I'm worried about that is just because of the energy envelope. Again, sometimes when you're neurodivergent, sometimes when you're living with chronic pain, it can be very difficult to grab a task and finish to completion. And a lot of us tell ourselves if we don't get it, we don't finish it, we don't get the happy chemicals. So a lot of us will just straight up avoid doing it because what's the point of using the energy envelope if we're not even going to get the reward that comes with using the energy envelope? What we end up getting instead is exhaustion and mental fatigue and crash, and nobody wants that. So it becomes kind of like this loop thing. I want to preface is probably too late to use because I should have said it at the beginning. I want to point out I am not a psychologist, a sociologist, a therapist. I have no certifications for any of this shit. It is personal experience only. Please do not take my word as law. Please listen to your own bodies, your own selves. I'm not responsible of you. Take care of managing your own stuff. I'm just speaking from my personal experience. So, getting back to the whole dopamine thing, I decided to put on as I was doing stuff. I had music initially going on, but then I decided to switch it up and put it on to book talk, book twitch, book twitchers, people that I like listening to. I looked to find somebody that I had listened to before, and nobody was live yet, but a bunch of people were about to be live. So I put on like a queue of music in the meantime. And when I knew everybody was starting to go live, that's when I started jumping into streams. I didn't stay in any one stream super long because I wanted to kind of spread myself out and show support where I could with the people that I know, and also to reach out to some people that I hadn't maybe read before. I found a couple new people because of that recently. Not necessarily like every single stream they do is reading streams, but a lot of them do. And even if it's like once a week, they are now on my follow list. Like I make sure to check in with my readers because, as I've mentioned a few times in a few different streams, I collect readers. I'm not the only one who collects readers, but I do very purposefully make sure to follow readers and to give them support wherever I can. I'm very pro support. We talked about that previous stream. It's important to me to support people who do the same thing I do, to build that community, to build that network of trust and kindness and hope that everybody follows the same suit. So I found a couple new readers over the course of the last week or two doing that. And the one that I found yesterday was Roxy Burnsy, or Roxy Burns with a Z. She primarily reads. That's her thing. A plus, that's how I started. Well, that's how I started getting regular, was reading streams. And she also is studying English literature, so pro on that as well. So I was really excited to see her reading stream. I had initially started with Ellen. That was part of the reason I mentioned Ellen at the beginning, because I started with Ellen's stream. And while I was watching Alan's stream, I was looking around other people's to see who I could find, if there was anybody new. And I found Roxy Burnsy, and I decided to send Alan's streamers to Roxy Burnsy. And that's what happened. So we took our small little group and we brought them over to Roxy Burnsy. And we were in Roxy's stream for a bit and sharing book related things, talking about reading, talking about the safety that comes from reading in the public domain and the rebel tendency to go off the books, uh, figuratively speaking, and reading stuff that is maybe pop literature that is still uh, in the copyright domain, and talking about like the logistics of that and the morality of that and all of that stuff. I kind of am still in the scaredy cat category. I really want to make sure that I'm reading primarily from public domain because a lot of that literature isn't even necessarily being read actively anymore by like in college, in middle school, high school, in the public sphere, it is less popular. That's why there's a lot of adaptions that are coming out using a lot of this material, because otherwise it would fall out of the um, public sphere. Unless you're into reading classics, unless you're taking coursework in classic literature. Otherwise, it's just, it falls out. Sometimes the adaptions are movies, sometimes the adaptions are reinterpretations. I love all adaptions. It's what I specialized in when I was in school. Personally, that's my um, special interest is adaptions. So I like to read from public domain for that reason, but also because I love a lot of public domain books. Those are the stuff that I read when I was in college. Those are the stuff that I read when I was first dipping my feet into reading for fun. I have a big soft spot for a lot of children's literature, and a lot of classics children's literature is in the public domain. So there's that. I don't read a whole lot of pop literature, mostly because I don't especially love pop literature trends. And that's what makes it popular. It's what everybody's currently reading right now. So you'll see the trends of specific genres go up and down. That's why vampires were a huge trend for a while. That's why monster stuff was like monster romance was really popular for a while. That's why romance in general as a genre is really popular. Me and my spouse were actually talking about that um, with my housemates the other day about how certain romantic pop literature is being turned into movies, and some of those movies are awful because they're based on material that's kind of awful. Anyway, getting back to Roxy. We crashed Roxy's stream, or raided, to be more specific, we raided Roxy's stream. And while I was in Roxy's stream, I was also bopping around because, again, I enjoy showing support where I can. And I found that Sexy Sloth was finishing up their stream. It wasn't my intention to join Sloth's stream as she was ending her stream. It just happened to be that way. But I had watched Sloth's stream a couple days prior and followed and was enjoying listening to her reading, and it was very nice. And I thought, let me show some love to her before she's out, get that engagement shooting up because I'm a yapper and the algo and Twitch really love an active chat. So did a little yapping, suggested we go and raid Roxy. And that's what we did. So it was Alan's stream and it was Sexy Sloth's stream. And we all moved into Roxy's stream and we all were talking about book stuff because that's what we do. We talk about book stuff. That's what Book Twitch is about. And we stayed with Roxy until Roxy was done. And after we finished with Roxy, we raided into Jev's stream, Jevv and NZ, because she emphasizes in her Twitch handle NZ because she's in New Zealand. Bonus points is because, the time difference. She was earlier in her day. She had more stamina. A lot of us who read in the US, it gets later in the day. We start to run out of stamina. We can just jump into somebody in a different time zone and they're going strong. It's great. Plus, they get to experience additional exposure. And that's what we did. It was a total of like 12 or 13 of us raiding in. It doesn't sound like a lot, but any little number counts. We all appreciate that. And we all followed each other and we all talked about books and it was a great time. I enjoyed it a lot. And I made some new friends. And that's always my favorite thing to do is to make new friends online, which was another thing we talked about a couple streams ago. It feels good to have a community, even if it's not a community that I can access in the outside, in the IRL, in the meatosphere. I think somebody mentioned that a couple streams ago. The meat space, MEAT space, but also the pun of that being MEET/MEAT. It's good. I love the double meaning. Not having a community necessarily in the real world can be sometimes a little disheartening, but having any community is great. And I enjoy that a lot. And specifically talking about books and literature, since that was my major, and it was my major because it's something I'm personally passionate about, it was great. I really genuinely love that. and I hope that we can continue to build community together. We talked a lot in the stream about trying to get a Twitch club going so that more of us can connect. Partly because the category of reading and writing on Twitch is predominantly dominated by writers. There's not a negative thing. That's just an observation. That's just how it became popular. And I've also noticed a lot of reading stream types will do pomo reading, which is what I specifically do because it helps me regulate how much time I spent so I don't get distracted and also lose track of myself and make sure that I'm drinking water and I'm getting up and stretching because those are very important things to do. And when you have ADHD and you lock in, it's very easy to forget to do your ATLs. So doing Pomo helps me with that. It also gives me a timeline, a time limit, so I know what is accessible-ish for me and maybe also to my audience because my audience might get bored after hearing me read for 4 hours straight. Maybe they also need a break, so we all take a break together. And a lot of Pomo readers will use Lo-Fi City and other Pomo games, so they'll be hanging out in those streams, those stream categories. So we're not all in the same place. A lot of us will be in just chatting. A lot of us will be in different Pomo platform game type things. Some of us will be in reading and writing, but not a lot of us. So being able to have like a stream club might help with that. But we have to have a partner to quote unquote sponsor the club. And a lot of the current reading Twitch groups, channels, streamers, words are fun. A lot of those people are already in their own clubs or are not interested in doing that because they're maybe feeling a little bit of pressure slash competitiveness and they don't want to spread their viewership around. Words are hard. They don't want to spread their viewership around because that might mean that they choose to um, be in those people's stream rather than theirs when theirs are live. I feel personally like, first of all, who cares? You might not necessarily like what any one streamer is reading. So it's nice to be able to have other readers to hang out in. And maybe you're only there to chat with the people in the stream. Like it's nice to have the person reading, but maybe you're more active in chat because you like hanging out with the people that are in the chat. I'm kind of both personally. If I don't especially like or care about what is being read, I might put them on in the background and not be active in chat, or I might dual wield some streamers. So I'll have them on a lower volume so that I can do that. Because any engagement is better than no engagement and also building community, et cetera, et cetera. So having multiple readers in my pocket who I can bounce around to see if there's a book that I maybe want to listen along to or read along to or a chat that I might be especially interested in because a lot of the people in this chat, you start to become familiar with them. That's how you build, again, building community. It's all connected. Why is my stuff moving? It's all connected. It's probably because it's not steady ground. The basement floor is not steady ground. I've noticed that. So I'm trying to be better about not shaking so much. It's hard. I'm very animated when I speak. So, where was I going with all of this? Oh, yeah, clubs. Having a club would give everybody the ability to kind of link up and cycle around readers and spread the love. I personally feel that way. And a lot of partner streamers, they got their audience. They don't want to share their audience. They rely on their audience because a lot of the people who are partners, like that is no longer just a hobby streamer. That's somebody who's really dedicated to doing this part or even full time. And I understand that. I respect that. It's the hustle. Everybody's doing the hustle. Some people don't care so much about how many people are following them. This is hobby streaming. They enjoy doing it because they enjoy connecting with people, because they enjoy talking to their stream. I really love talking with stream people, like as a chatter and as a person who wants more activity in my streams, not necessarily because I feel it's the only reason to watch me, but because I enjoy that engagement. I enjoy conversation, and I want to encourage that more, I feel. So some of those streamers like Faye Delay, who I've talked about before, not necessarily a reading streamer, but definitely a Pomo streamer and a gaming streamer. And I originally found Faye Delay through a colorizing, like I downloaded colorizing, which is a coloring app, and I was enjoying it. So I thought maybe I should go and see if there's any streamers who are also doing it, because I bet you they're probably also yapping while they do their coloring. And I found Faye Delay, and the instant click I felt, not just with her audience, her viewers, but also with her as a person. I should say they, because she and they, and I want to be more supportive of people who identify as both. They have a very chatty group. Their humor is great. Their partner's humor, Chief, Stranger Piece, is equally great. They're what's the word I'm looking for? I hate continuing to use the word community, even though it's correct. 90-second ad. Don't leave, please. It's 90 seconds. I'll be here when you get back. You're not going to miss much. So I'm just going to yap a little bit while I don't want everybody to miss anything. So I'm going to drink some water. Going to hang out with you guys. If anybody who's not watching the ads, what's your favorite color? Sleep. Contrary to maybe the assumption, my favorite color is not, in fact, yellow. The yellow is specifically because it's attached to bees. That's the only reason. And the reason I have the logo, if you're not already familiar, it was part of a offered, gifted piece of art from an online community I had built over on Tumblr when I was still doing Tumblr. I used the handle Hip Domestic on Tumblr because the category I was talking about, that specific Tumblr, was about living in a modern society with less skills. Excuse me. Maybe less skills than you were expecting to have when you got to the point where you had to go out into the world and live in that world. A lot of people, welcome back from the ads. I hope they weren't too boring. So what you missed was me talking about nothing. I said, anybody hanging out, not in ads, what's your favorite color? And I was talking about my color not being actually yellow, and why, because a lot of people might assume, looking on my page, it's yellow all over the place. It's not actually, my favorite color is not actually yellow. It's the yellow is associated with bees. The reason it's a bee icon is because of another community that I had initially facilitated, and what's the word I'm looking for? Curated. That's the word I was looking for. Because that's another special interest of mine, is helping people learn about how to navigate adulthood and living away from home for the first time, because a lot of people don't know a lot of skills. Hovering. What the hell? Am I dropping frames? I might be dropping frames. That's dumb. Twitch, don't do that. So, books is a special interest that I care a lot about. Helping people adapt to living away from home for the first time because we live in a capitalistic hellscape and they maybe never learned the skills because their caregivers growing up never taught them the skills because of that terrible thing that happens where people decide what skills are important and what skills are worth throwing out. Modernism can do that. There was a time where food was not something you could get in a grocery store. You had to grow it, you had to hunt it, you had to um, farm it. So a lot of those skills were lost. They no longer were equivalent is not the word I'm looking for. They were no longer required skills because grocery stores started popping up because of the results of wars and things like that. Food was more centrally located. Commercialized farming became more of a thing. And all of that stuff changed the way we live and continues to change the way we live. A lot of people primarily eat fast food because they just don't have the time to cook. They get a lot of stuff from the freezer aisle and they subscribe to meal kits because it's easier than shopping. It's easier than meal planning. A lot of things become time savers. But there's always a time where you get to this point where you're like, okay, well, life feels like a slog and like I'm not invested and like everything is just same all the time. It would be nice to try something different. And that's when people start to finally learn these skills like canning and preserving food and farming and beekeeping and all of these things. And a lot of these skills are harder to learn about or find because they're not necessarily taught all the time. You have to go searching for those masters of the skill. And they're not skills that are inaccessible, but they're maybe not accessible in a person's home, town, or whatever the case may be. So that's when you start to fall into books. And that's when you start to fall into YouTube tutorial type stuff. And if you're lucky, there's maybe a local group, a local community that you can start learning from. If you have funds to do that, sometimes they're not free. And that's perfectly understandable. I feel like everybody deserves to be paid for their labor. I don't always necessarily agree that they need to be paid in money. I wish that there was more of a not bargaining because it's not that's not quite the word I'm looking for, but um, maybe bartering. That's the word I'm looking for. More of a barter system. I am a strong proponent of the bartering system. If you can do this and maybe take some of the labor off of another person and you trade skills, you trade um, products and stuff like that. I once read about this woman who wanted a loom, a very specific kind of loom. I'm forgetting what it's called, but it's not a spinning wheel type loom. It's more of a lap style loom where you do a lot more work with your fingers and your hands. And in order to do that, she went on basically a fetch quest, like in real life fetch quest, where she got somebody a like a pint of homemade, not homemade, but home farmed cream because the person she got the cream for was making cheese, and the person who she got the cream for gave her another thing to trade with somebody else, and that person knew another person, and ultimately all the way down the chain, she was able to get the loom. But it was no money was actually exchanged at any point. It was all based on bartering and knowing people to link together to get you where to go. I thought it was such a great story to hear about. And I really enjoyed knowing that was something a person could do. I wish more people did that, bartering and sharing skills and building community and learning together, all of those things. So when I was working as hip domestic on Tumblr, I was sharing a lot of posts. I wrote some too. My big viral post was about how to move into an apartment for the first time and what to expect from that. I feel like that is definitely not something that is commonly taught to young people by their parents. Working class people, I should say, to clarify. It's not something that's necessarily discussed with children. Children live without the burden of how to pay their bills, how to put food on the table, how to make sure that everyone is healthy. They are kind of just there for the ride. Some parents will start to teach these skills, but ultimately, what I seem to find is a lack of knowledge about that. It used to be there were skills being taught in high school and middle school that were home ec type classes. So you would learn how to do things like sew a button on your shirt if a button pops off, and how to balance a checkbook. We don't have checkbooks necessarily the same way anymore, but budgeting is still a thing that people have to do. A lot of people don't do it, and then they look at their bank at the end of the day and they're like, "Holy shit, I had $500 and now I have $50. What happened?" And they backtrack through all of their receipts, and they're like, "Oh, I spent a lot of money on this or that, and now I have nothing." If you learn to budget, you don't have to worry about that. You're like, "I have this much money. I can spare it on this and that and the other, and now I know how to not have $0 at the end of the day." These are all skills that aren't really taught anymore. And what's more scary for me is that I'm seeing with the rise of AI that a lot of people are just even giving up the desire to learn for themselves. They are throwing their trust into computers, which are scraping the information from the bowels of the internet, stuff that is not vetted, stuff that is not checked, that is inaccurate, and might even be from other AI. So it becomes a tornado of misinformation. That scares me so much. As a person who deeply enjoys learning and in some degree teaching, knowing that people are giving up that desire to learn and teach by giving it over to computers and AI. A lot of these programs are also owned and operated by people who don't give a shit about you. They only care about profit. That just scares me. I don't like it. It gives me the ick in the worst way. So I've gone out of my way whenever possible to help people learn about stuff, either through providing that information to them from reputable sources, or reading about it, or discussing it, and sharing that knowledge is important to me. And that was what I did with Hip Domestic and my viral post about what to expect moving out for the first time, how much money you should save away, what you should have in terms of your budget. A lot of apartments ask you to be making 2 times what the cost of rent is. So if you're trying to get into an apartment that's $500 a month, that means that you need to be making enough money twice that. So $1,000 or more. Sometimes places will ask 2.5, so that would be $1,250 a month. And that's just to cover the cost of basic living. In a lot of cases, that's not enough. You need to be making 4 times. what the cost of rent is because of the whole style of budgeting. You need to be able to have money put aside for your health, for something bad happens. You need to be able to pay for your car, the gas, the insurance, the maintenance of it. You need to be able to take care of your own self in terms of making sure that you get haircuts, that you have that healthcare, that you are like getting clothes that fit you and making sure that those clothes aren't literally falling apart. I was really, really poor growing up. It took me a long time to unlearn that, you only buy one shirt and you literally wear it out. And then when you outgrow it, you pass it on to somebody else. When you hit a certain age, you stop outgrowing things, except around the middle sometimes. And a lot of people, when they have fluctuating weight, which is something that happens a lot with overweight people specifically, um, they'll keep their stuff because they're hoping that they'll be able to eventually shrink down and fit into it again. So you're just carrying a lot of stuff with you all the time, and it becomes burdensome in its own way. It took me a long time to unlearn that. It took me a long time to remind myself that it was okay to buy more things that fit me better, that maybe align more with my personal desires of how I want to present, especially as a person who came out non-binary in my 30s and continues to evolve and grow. Like, it's important to feel good in your clothes, whatever that means. If it means you need to layer more, if it means that you wear more masculine or feminine presenting clothes, if it means you build yourself as more of a enigma and you're just kind of wearing whatever floats your boat, mixing it around, you need to be able to do that, and you should be able to go out and buy those clothes. So budgeting for that kind of stuff. Even if it means going to the thrift store rather than buying it fresh off the rack, or buying stuff off the rack and then paying for a tailor, whatever the case may be. These are all things that you need to learn to budget for, in addition to living. And living is the minimum, is the bar, the bottom, the baseline. If you can't afford to live, what do you do? And that's when you start to build the whole connections with human interactions, learning how to cohabit with people who are not your family and how to navigate that, sharing chores, sharing responsibility, that sort of thing. Not necessarily relying on a romantic partner, because sometimes that's messy too. Who wants to move in with somebody that they don't know for certain is going to stick around for the long haul? And a lot of people will go straight from living at home to living with a partner, and they don't spend any time living by themselves. And I don't want to say that isn't a perfectly acceptable thing to do, because that would not be fair of me. But I think it's really important in cases like that that you make sure to have something of a separate budget in addition to a combined budget. Mostly because you should never rely on the other person to cover everything for you. Even in the longest term relationships, there's always a risk of something bad happening. Maybe your partner gets really sick and has to go into the hospital. Are you even able to pay for that? And also, are you able to live without their income for a short period of time? Forever. My partner, my spouse, right now is unable to work for several reasons. And because of that, I have to be the main working person in our relationship. And because we both are used to having a very specific lifestyle, that can be difficult for both of us. We have to make a lot of adjustments to what we can and cannot do. And because we need the additional income, we have to sometimes rely on the kindness of family members and other people to get us from bill to bill, because it is almost impossible for an individual in our current hellscape to live by themselves. specifically a working class person, if you're not in a job that pays a living wage, you cannot live alone. You have to make exceptions. You either have to have a roommate or you have to be living renting out of somebody's house in a room or just it can be so defeating having to look at the world that way. And that was one of the comments that I got a lot in the post that I made was some people saying that um my advice wasn't necessarily relevant anymore. And I can understand that. It's a perfectly valid takeaway from that. I don't think it has zero merit. It's still applicable, but the numbers are a little harder to to guarantee anymore. And there's a certain amount of privilege that comes with that. Being able to be employed, being able to be employable and making a certain wage. Like the whole living wage situation. A lot of people live in states where the cost of living is really high and the quote unquote minimum wage is really low or they're only able to work certain type of jobs because they don't have the experience and or the education. That's something that I notice a lot with young people specifically, especially, is a lot of them don't have the career experience to get a job that pays well enough for them to be able to live out of their home. And some people have terrible parents who they say, "Oh, you're 18 now, you need to get the fuck out of my house." Or, "Oh, hey, you're 18 now, you need to start paying rent." But not having taught the skills of how to budget, how to buy food for yourself, how to pay your bills, any of that stuff. So it just becomes a situation where people are set up for failure rather than success. And I hate that a lot. And I feel like a lot of people who are in my catch-all, being neurodivergent, being chronic pain, being kind of anarchist, being distrusting of the current political climate, we're all kind of looking at each other like, what the fuck do we do? The idea of living communally is appealing, but who of us is able to do this? Who of us like all if we can get all 15 of us inside this trench coat, maybe we can do it. But you still have to have that knowledge base. Like, it's really important to have that knowledge base and to share that knowledge. Otherwise, you're 15 critters in a trench coat, but you're still going into the garbage can to get what you were looking for, rather than going to, the Whole Foods down the corner and getting the top tier shit. I hope what I'm saying makes sense. This is kind of fallen way off of the whole book twitch thing. Because that's what happens. You just kinda I get rambly and I just kind of follow where the hyperfixation takes me. Uh, there was another thought. I had a thought and it flew away. I have to find it again. My favorite color is purple, by the way. It's not it is definitely number 1, but I wouldn't say I don't like other colors. I have a whole palette of colors that I really like. They lean a little bit more towards the earth palette, the earth, the browns, the greens, the neutral vegetation type colors rather than the sky colors or things like that. Like I kind of lean in a little bit of the ocean colors and the earth colors, less so the sky colors. Um, my watch is telling me I need to walk because I haven't walked for the past hour. Or yeah, I've been sitting for an hour. It's time to stand up. So I encourage you with me, chat, to get up real quick and do a stand and stretch. I don't have that redeem claimed, but I'm still gonna do it. Off screen because I don't want you all staring at me being awkward on screen. Oh, there we go. Ooh, cracking the bones, cracking the bones. Anyway, I'm so glad I wore this shirt. It's a little less You can't see the shadows of my body as much. Also, related, but it was right here as I was stretching. I found the little remote that came with um my little light thingy that I used the other day. So I might show you guys that, but I'd have to turn the light off real. Thank you. Hang on a second. I need to tell the bot it's a good bot. Um, brain. I would need to turn the light off. I think I'm going to do that real quick so that I can show, because I don't think that's going to show unless I have the light off. Maybe I can do it on the black thing behind me. Let's see if it works. Yeah, that kind of works. So that's the standard, like the default right there. The remote gives me the ability to switch colors. I wasn't able to figure out how to do that without having the little remote, and I knew I had it, but I didn't know where the hell I had put it. It had fallen in the cracks of my bed, like around my bed. So, with that in mind, there's the green and the red. I think this is a blend of blue and green. Yep, blend of blue and green. And we've got red and green and red and blue, which kind of gives purple. I kind of like that. And then we've got a tricolor red, blue, green. It's kind of hard to tell. Oh, because it rotates between them. Me personally, I find that way too distracting because it doesn't do like a fade in, fade out sort of thing. If it did a fade in, fade out sort of thing, I probably would like it more, but it doesn't. So typically just stay with the blue because it does give that nebulous sky sort of thing. But you can also turn the stars off, the LED green dots off altogether and just have color, which gives a bit more like ocean waves. Jesus Christ. I think that was the dog. Sorry about that, chat. The only thing that sucks about this little doohickey is I can hear the mechanics. So if the room is silent or I'm not paying. Yeah, I know you can't hear it, but I can hear it, and that's bothersome to me. So I have to be either something has to be going on or I have to be too distracted to care. But I did notice it a couple few hours ago when I was fiddling with it, that I would need to do that, otherwise it was gonna drive me crazy. I'm still planning to use it. I think the quality of light during stream the other night was really enjoyable, and I'm gonna do that for night streams more. But daytime or light streams, definitely gonna have to keep a light on. And we'll probably start using this clip-in light until I find an alternative because the quality of light is a little less harsh on my eyes because it's pointing at the ceiling rather than pointing down at me when I don't have a light covering and not pointing at the screen and not fucking with the lens on my stupid camera. Okay. I don't even know how many people are actually listening in chat right now or if everybody's kind of tuned out. Totally fine, whatever you do. Lurkers are always welcome. But I was going to offer to do some side quests for anybody who was interested in getting those. Why did those not? Hang on a minute. I had my damn queue open, but it didn't show up. Thank you for those redeems, Cozy. I did them. Obviously, you saw me do them. That's so dumb. What the heck? You are double lurking. How dare you not devote 100% attention to me? Do you know who I am? It's fine, I don't care. Uh, so having the dang redeem requests queue open is not getting um auto updated when people do redeems. That's fucking frustrating. Listen, it's not because I don't wanna be in your streams. It's that recently your streams have been taking place in time slots where I'm super busy, so I haven't been able to pop in, and I am so sorry about that. I will make more of an attempt to pop in. That is entirely my B. I will work on that. I know you're gonna say, "It's fine, I don't care," but you made the joke. There's a tiny ounce of truth in it, so I'm gonna make a better attempt because you make more of an attempt than I do, and I hate that for me, not for you. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, okay. I was going to say, I did say, but then I distracted myself. It's not even giving me the option to see who's here. That's probably fine. Life be lifin'. Brother, homie, you're so fucking right. And that was what I started the stream by saying was that I just got done working 2 8-hour shifts back to back. I haven't been active very often. I actually kind of regret that for me. Um, because I should be. I shouldn't be shooting on myself as I've been told in the past because that's negative thinking. We want to try and think positively. You can still enforce good habits by being positive rather than being negative. So learning to be nicer to myself includes doing that. It would be beneficial for me and healthy for me if I made more of an attempt to be physically active. Especially getting older, my joints have been extra angy, and motion is lotion. I have arthritis now. I actually have been diagnosed with arthritis. That is such a scary thing to hear for myself. Yeah. Um, beep boop 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 beep 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 boop beep 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 boop. Oh, they are so fucking loud. The house is old. I shouldn't be so mean. Um, great. And now a car alarm is going off somewhere. It's quiet enough. I'm sure the mic isn't picking it up, and if it is, it's picking up very, very quietly. And if it is picking up at all, most people don't listen to me at full volume. Why should you? I'm loud. But I can hear it, and it's distracting. There we go. Okay. The house is old. It is very squeaky. I can hear when people move around. It is especially loud when people walking around with stompy ass feet and dogs that have tails that whip against everything when they walk. Happy tails. Most of the time, her tail is not that happy. Most of the time, it's tucked between her legs. She's not a very confident dog. There they go again. What was I talking about? I have properly derailed myself. Physical activity. It would be best for me to be more active. I have arthritis now. Hearing that is scary. I also have other conditions that would be better if I was more active. So I'm trying to get better. Part of how I'm trying to get better is by going to a physical therapist. It is something that is covered by insurance. The only thing is then you need to practice what they teach you because I'm only going once a week. That's definitely not enough time to uh, be improving, especially if the only activity I'm doing is when I go to see the PT. And the PT is not the physical therapist. PT is short for physical therapist in this context, not part time, which is another short for PT. Um, Coincidentally, I work part time, so double PT. uh, Trying to be more physically active. That's good to do. You can do that just by walking around. You don't have to do anything crazy. You don't have to have a lot of like equipment and shit. You can just walk around your house even. You could walk around literally around your house even. Any sort of activity is a good activity. I need to be better about it, especially with all of the conditions that I live through. It can be hard, of course, because I also have chronic pain that is not directly related to the fact that I have arthritis or anything else. It is something that my parents rolled for me when they were rolling my character sheet. It's not my fault. I have to better myself. So being active is important. I wish I had a cool adult who told me some of these things when I was younger, who wasn't like necessarily responsible for me. Because, you listen to your teachers, but you also don't give a shit sometimes, especially when you're a kid. They make you go to the gym. They make you go to some form of art class. Whether or not you like it depends on you. That's why certain people, they don't do that stuff when they get older. Like, they don't keep doing music because as soon as they're done with what they were required to do in school, they are going to do their own thing. They're not going to keep up with the instrument that they learned. Tell you that much, unless they're into that. Some people, that's human beings in general, right? Not everybody is going to like the same thing, and the people who do like the same things, they collect together and they become an amorphous mass. Sometimes they talk themselves in circles. AI, I fucking hate AI. I fucking hate the fact that people are relying on AI. You cannot rely on AI for everything, and you definitely should not rely on AI for everything. AI can be useful if used correctly. A lot of people don't. And I feel bad for the people who use it incorrectly. And I hate, hate that there are AI ads on Twitch and on YouTube. That shit pisses me. I will be literally watching somebody talking about how shitty AI is, and then there will be an ad break, and the ad break will be about AI. And I saw one specifically that was like an English literature. It was specifically said literature major in the ad who was using AI. I wanted to pick my computer up and throw it out the window and then throw a grenade from a grenade launcher at it. And then when it was done burning in my yard, I wanted to go with a canister of salt and just pour it on top and literally ruin the earth so nothing else could grow on it. That's how angry that made me. Oh my god, I hated it so much. As a literature major, it was literally beaten into me about plagiarism, about stealing other people's work, about copywriting things, about or taking things that are copywritten because like personal what is it? It's a phrase, it's a phrase, it's a phrase. What's the phrase? Um, intellectual property. Intellectual property. So and I know some people are gonna fucking argue with me about that too. They're not here right now, thank goodness. But intellectual property, blah 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 blah. Nothing belongs to everybody. But at the same time, I think if you put the work in, it's kind of important, and you should like respect somebody's work that they put into something by not stealing it, uh, or claiming that it was yours, like rewriting it, repackaging it, and saying I did this. You did not do this. You're a terrible thing that did that, that stole from somebody else. And AI is that guy. AI is that guy who sees your cool thing, takes it, repackages it, and gives it to somebody else and says, "I made that." No, you didn't. You motherfucker. And that was one of those things that as a person of the arts, because that's what my bachelor's degree is Bachelor of Arts. People stealing shit pisses me off on a molecular level. I cannot tolerate that. It was beaten into me, and even before it was beaten into me, I already felt that way. And that's what AI does. And to see that ad about a literature student pissed me off even more. Like, we weren't allowed to use Wikipedia as a source in writing essays and stuff because it was user generated. User generated. Other humans used it and worked on it together, collaboratively fact checked each other and posted stuff. And yes, I understand I understand that people can fucking lie. That's the whole point of why AI is also bullshit. People can lie. People cannot include all of the information. People can, fake it all together for fun and profit. And people, other people who are less inclined to do the work will not vet it. Oh my God, it pisses me off so much. Which is why it's important, even when you use a source like Wikipedia, to go and check the source material. I'm going to yank my necklace right off. Don't do that. To go and check the source material to make sure that it's from a verifiable source, something that is fact checked, something that is kept updated, that is not stagnant. It is especially because you can't use medicine from the 1200s in today's society. Everybody has learned some shit since then. It used to be you have a serious illness that they did bloodletting and leeches. We don't do that anymore. Reason. You know what? Like fucking A. I learn shit. Like, yes, it's important to know the history of something. We learn it like the fact that I know that we used to use blood and leeches. I learned that. I wasn't just told that. I went and I looked and I learned it. I'm like, oh yeah, people used to use blood and leeches. Why don't we use blood and leeches anymore? Oh, that's great. Let me show you some information about that. AI could say we still use bloodletting and leeches, or that in some countries that don't actually do it, they use blood and leeches. Like shit, like fucking shit eating dick nipples, man. What the fuck? I hate AI so much. And I hate people who don't put in the work to check shit. And that's another thing you learn as a person who does like essays and shit. And literature majors are not the only people who do research. Sciences are highly research dependent. Medical science is research dependent. You're not going to trust some wackadoo with zero education in a field to tell you that this is how you do this thing and put it into practice as a doctor. You're going to trust other doctors who have shared and practiced and made sure to test all of these things, you know? So when you're learning how to be to do research as a writer, as a literature major, you learn where to find material that is vetted. You like certain specific websites, .govs, .orgs in some cases, .edus for sure. People who are verifiable, who have done the research, who have put it into practice, who know this, that, and the other. They've it's important. If somebody were to tell me that they are a specialist of a particular field, and then I went on to learn that they primarily learned their material from AI or ChatGPT, which is an AI program, some bullshit like that, I would immediately nope the fuck out of that whole conversation. Because, yeah, they do draw from verifiable sources, but they don't tell you what they draw those verifiable sources from. There's no way to check it even. Like with Wikipedia, you can at least check where some of this shit has come from. And there's enough people who are maintaining Wikipedia as a website to put things like unverifiable or not source or anything like that as an addendum to something. People who watch specific categories, specific articles like fucking hawks to make sure that any bullshit that gets put on there doesn't stick around very long. Like, I've seen entire internet campaigns where people might like hate stalk or hate watch a particular actor or something and immediately jump in there and start fucking shitting on their Wikipedia article, and somebody immediately comes in who's watching that shit and it's like, no, 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 we're not keeping that. We're not doing that. The fact that there will be news articles about a person who's quote unquote died without checking, and it turns out they died in a movie or a role or some bullshit like that, and the person's coming out of the woodwork being like, that's not, I'm not dead. Where did you get this information from? People who don't vet their shit. That's where. People who don't do the fucking work. Please don't do that. Just don't do that. Check your sources, make sure you know where you're learning from, make sure to practice the things you learn, and also to share those learnings with other people so that the people who are learning stuff are learning from somebody who actually knows what they're doing, what they're talking about. It is so important, you guys. I cannot talk about that enough. Bringing down my blood pressure now. Um, it's especially insidious and devious, in my humble opinion, because there are generative AI books now by mass-produced publishers producing information that isn't necessarily being vetted, and people aren't checking. They're just reading it. It becomes another one of those things where, people are not citing their sources. So there might be, here's an example. People who do mushroom gathering, are usually people who know what the hell they're doing, people who have done a lot of work on learning to identify the correct things, on making sure that they're not getting the wrong things. There's always a fear, because especially even with mushrooms, maybe you get a bad mushroom and it might be because you didn't check to see if it was a healthy mushroom, because mushrooms are all fruits. That's what they refer to them. They're the fruiting body of the mycelium. Making sure that the mycelium is healthy, that kind of stuff. So if a person just casually goes out there and grabs any old bit of mushroom off the ground and eats it, if they don't know what they're doing, they could potentially kill themselves or kill other people, or at the very least make themselves violently ill. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. And there are generative AI books that are being published about mushroom foraging, that are wrong. And I learned about that because a couple of the verifiable mushroom foraging types that I follow in content creation were talking about that. They're saying how diabolical it is, how scary it is, because they know people who are out there hurting other people or hurting themselves, that it was completely avoidable, and maybe they didn't have access to these people. So, they decided they were going to try this thing and they just wanted to take the easiest, quote unquote, the easiest route. With something like foraging, you need to know your shit before you go out there and just start to do it for yourselves. It's fantastic to have books and pictures, even by verifiable sources, but it's always better in cases like that to learn from a person in the meat space, so that they're able to show you, they're able to point these things out, you're able to see them in the world. live, in color, in person, in touchable space. So you know what to look for. So you know what to be cautious of. And even some information might not necessarily, because there's always, I remember somebody posting about um, poison ivy versus like regular ivy and poison oak versus regular oak. And what used to be the phrase was this or that, so that you would know by looking at it that this was healthy and or this was safe and this wasn't safe. And some of that information is no longer accurate, or it was never accurate to begin with, or it was only partially accurate. So it's important to know people who know their shit. I think that is the valuable lesson to take away from this entire ramble. Um, I know that a lot of artists, like physical artists, people who make drawings and things, um, animators and graphic work people, specific to be more specific, have a special hatred for AI because that was a huge trend for a little while. Was AI programs that scraped the internet for style and absolutely took everything from entire creators. That's why a lot of the art that you can tell is generative AI, even still. Um, is it all looks the same. There was a joke for a while, like the Cal Arts students all drew the same animation style because everybody was learning from the same source material. It's the same with AI. Um, you start making so much of the same thing, people start to recognize it, and some people get bored really fast. Uh, Semi-topical, I play a lot of mobile games because I have a couple different apps that pay you for having to be exposed to ads. It's a icky thing to do, for sure, but it's $10 I maybe didn't have before, and I can use that $10 to buy games on Steam. Everybody wins. Games that don't have ads, but they might have, pay-to-play content, which is a bummer. I hate that. I hate pay to win, and I hate, pay cosmetics, and I also understand, that people who make the work need to be paid fairly for their work, and a lot of animators and artists don't get paid nearly enough. And wouldn't it be so great if, like, patronage existed in the modern way, where some billionaire really liked your art style, so they basically paid for your entire life just so that you could make them pretty art, or write them plays in the case of, like, William Shakespeare and shit like that. Wouldn't that be great? So instead, we have Patreon.com where people can, like, pool together and pay for somebody's living if you're lucky enough to get popular enough to go viral enough to get on people's radars to begin with. We live this is the hellscape I talk about. It can be such a bummer sometimes, especially when the source you're using, the platform you're using is also a business that wants to make its money. Everybody gets their cut. Everybody gets their share. It is frustrating, especially when all you really want to do is create and survive and have people appreciate the work that you did. I think that is definitely a universal feeling. Um, because we're not all hermits who live alone in the woods. Uh, we all there is human beings are social creatures. Even the most misanthropic ones still want some kind of socializing, be it animal, vegetable, or mineral. But the people who rely on animal interaction, specifically the human animal, to feel like they have accomplished things. It's important um, to feel like you're doing good stuff. And unfortunately, because we don't live in the barter system kind of society, we have to live. We have to pay for to be alive. Um, and none of us got the choice. That's we could put the actions into place, but the putting the actions into place would require so much work that not everybody's willing to do. And that's why things like AI exist. Um, if we wanted to not live in a capitalistic hellscape, we could separate ourselves from that hellscape. We could collectivize and unionize and separate ourselves from that and build the structures that we want. And also, there's a certain amount of privilege that comes with that, unfortunately. Um, so it becomes again, it becomes a cyclical thing, and it can be exhausting. Just after getting myself so heated talking about everything just now, I can feel myself getting a little exhausted having talked about it because of how depressing it can be. Um, I think that's another thing that sucks about ADHD. You have this built-in gratification drive where if you're not getting the gratification, you feel it giving you psychic damage. So, uh, it's really easy to just jump away if it's not doing it for you. So, we all want to do the enough. We wanna do enough where we're getting all of our needs met, and we're gonna do whatever we can to get our needs met. And if we can't do anything to get our needs met, then we're stuck in a place where we are reliant on other people. It's really hard, especially because a lot of the people who are able to help us aren't necessarily people who have our best interests in mind. That's where trauma starts. Because there are definitely people out there who do not have your best interest in mind. My parents claim that they did the best that they could, but I can safely say that they did not set me up for success. And they like to pat themselves on the back and tell themselves that they did such a good job with me. But if they had, I wouldn't be where I'm at financially at the age that I'm at. I would be much better. I know that, like, I know that about myself. I spent a lot of my life undiagnosed and thinking something was wrong with me, and that why couldn't I just do as good as everybody else was doing? And it became really depressing and really hard to live with, which is why I now take all kinds of medication to keep me from just feeling that awfulness all the time. And, you know, I have enough mental energy now just from being so pissed at things being so bad for so long that I've gone and done the initial things to be better. And I'm fortunate that I have the capacity to do that. I know a lot of people who can't. A lot of people who are incapable or they're beholden to other things. One of my very close friends, who I've known for, at this point, half of my life, um, for the longest time, was the primary caretaker of their parents, which is a horrible thing to have to be. These are people who created you and who are supposed to be your caretakers, and now you are forced to be theirs. And that can be especially difficult with adults who previously may have been able-bodied or able-minded and been able to take care of themselves, and now they can't, and they're angry and bitter and resentful about it, and they may take that out on their caretakers, and in this case, their caretaker was their child. And they were raised in such a way that they strongly believed it was their responsibility and to that they had to put up with that kind of bullshit. And it didn't matter how much I told them, "Hey, you don't have to put up with anything. Nobody you are not beholden to anybody but yourself. You need to take care of yourself first and foremost, because if you don't take care of yourself, then you're going to end up in this same situation where somebody has to take care of you. And you might not have anybody to do that for you. And even if you did, you might not want that for yourself. Um, it didn't matter how much of that I told them. Unfortunately, they still did it, and they did it until their parents were no longer here. And now they are living independently and alone, and they never really did that in the long term before. They did it in bouts for maybe a year here or there, a few months here or there, but they didn't do a whole lot of it that they could say confidently that they have been doing it for decades. And there's a lot of stuff that comes with that lack of experience. And it can be really hard and frustrating, especially when you also don't have a network. You don't have a tribe, you don't have a group of people who you can rely on and depend on. In situations like that where you become somebody's caretaker, it's very isolating. You might not necessarily have a lot of time for yourself. You have to be doing stuff for them all the time. And in some cases, having very little gratitude being given to you for the amount of work you're doing. Or in some cases, you're a shitty person who doesn't do a very good job at all, and you're shooting yourself and them in the foot. That's unfortunately how the case is with another one of my friends, where they are dependent on their parents and they struggle really hard with that because they really want to be independent and they can't because of all the things that they have to deal with, things that were on their character sheet that was rolled for them that they didn't want, and because their parents didn't necessarily do the best job at setting them up for success, they are stuck in a situation where they can't escape it. These are their caretakers. They have no choice. And maybe one of their caretakers is good at doing caretaking, but they're the only person, and this person definitely needs more than one caretaker. And the other person who's supposed to be their caretaker is a piece of shit and makes them feel terrible about themselves all the time and takes advantage of some of the things that is provided to them by the government and other shit like that. And it's so hard to have to hear about it. I would never tell them not to talk to me about it. I care about them deeply and immensely, and I want to be a place, a person that they can talk to and rely on. But I get so fucking angry for them. I get so fucking angry. Thank you for sticking around through the ads if you did. Um, Having to be dependent on and relying upon shitty ass people is so hard and frustrating. And it just makes me wish that there was a quote unquote village of people who did better jobs. I find myself being an antinatalist sometimes, and definitely, pessimistic, because people who should not be having children are producing children and then doing a terrible job at being their caretakers, and there's nothing they can do about it. And sometimes the government will step in, but it's not a guarantee that things will get better. Because sometimes they end up in the system and the system will chew you up and spit you out. And sometimes they'll get set with people who are really just taking advantage of them too. There's just so much ugly, terrible shit in the world, and it's so defeating, and it takes a lot of energy to be exposed to that, and it takes a lot of energy to look for good things, and just being alive is exhausting, and I wish that wasn't the case for everybody. Sometimes people that exhaustion, the fact that they have no choice, they have to feel that way, lights a fire under their ass, and they go out and they pursue positive change. And kudos to those people. I wish I had that kind of energy and motivation and youth in some cases, but now I'm an old fart and doing that kind of work is really hard. So I try and do that work in a a sociable setting by conversations and providing resources and stuff. I try to do the logic-based, literature-based, internet savvy-based stuff to help people get in touch with the things that they can maybe use to help themselves. And then there's situations where people don't want that help or they don't care enough about those resources. I had that happen to me when I was at work one time. I had a person, and I think I talked about that in a stream a few weeks ago. I had a lady come in who was unhoused and um, not receiving is probably the better word for it. Not receiving the care that should be a I hate that my brain wants to use all these big words and they're there, but I can't grab them when I need them. Um, it's not obligations. Um, Crap, I can't find it, and it's really frustrating. Don't get stuck on it. Keep talking. Don't get stuck on it. Keep talking. She didn't have these things that should be guaranteed. I can't find the word phrase that I'm actually looking for, but I'm gonna go with that. Things that were necessities. She didn't have access to them. They were not being provided to her. She did not have a caseworker. She did not have any of that. She gave me the impression that she didn't want a caseworker, that she felt like um, that it infantilized her. She didn't use those words, but that was the impression that I got. And she was especially mad at the system because she expected that care to be automatic. There's another word that's closer to what I'm looking for, but isn't quite there. They shouldn't be something she has to look for. They should be something that is automatically given. Things like having somewhere to live, things like having food, things like having uh, healthcare. I fucking hate that I can't find the word. Things that should be everybody should have, but she doesn't have them. And she felt especially angry that she had to go through a middleman just to get those things. And I understood. I understood where this frustration was coming from. I really do. I really do. And I wanted to help her desperately. I wanted to provide her with all these resources because it sounded like a lot of the things that she wanted could be attainable if she just did them. But I learned more and more as our conversation continued that she wasn't interested in doing the work. And as soon as I realized that, I started to disengage. Looking at it in hindsight, I should probably not have engaged at all, but it's really hard for me to hear about someone suffering and not want to help in the minimal way that I can. And for me, a lot of the stuff that I've learned about just the bare survival is stuff that I learned because I put the work in. Like, I could have been unhoused a few different times were it not for the fact that I had enough people who gave enough of a shit about me that I could couch surf. But even if I didn't have that, I still had enough resources to my own internal database that I could know how to get a shower and know how to have somewhere to store the very minimal amount of clothes that I have for next to nothing. and I knew where soup kitchens were and food banks were, and I knew how I could get some very basic money, that didn't require me having to sell my body or, um well, sell my body is probably the best way to put it because isn't manual labor just a different way of selling your body? But some of that manual labor is so underpaid and gets, delegated to people who it's criminal. That's part of the reason I hate Goodwill as an organization because they underpay disabled people to work for them with this idea of, "Oh, they would be unemployed if it wasn't for our good graces. They should be glad for whatever they get." I think that's bullshit in the biggest and most important way, which is why I do not use Goodwill services and I do not support Goodwill services and I do not give my earning power, my dollar power to people who support Goodwill services because it's all garbage. So as soon as I hear that people donate to Goodwill, like businesses like I know Pepsi and shit, some other people do Salvation Army. Salvation Army is equally bad. Salvation Army isn't even a charity, but they promote themselves like they are. As soon as I hear about that shit, I immediately disengage. And for a little while, that was how I mostly operated. But then I had to remind myself, there's no uh, what's the exact phrase? Uh, there's no ethical consumption. There it is. There's no ethical consumption under capitalism. So sometimes you have to rely on the demons. I think that's the case with people who live in food areas that are really scarce. Like that was something that happened a lot in Arizona. Living in Arizona, there are entire big portions of land that don't even have access to a grocery store, let alone a post office and things like that. So they have to go way further out to get their basic needs met, and they can't move closer because they can't. They don't have the funds to move. They don't have the wages to afford something that maybe they don't already have. So certain services like Amazon, for instance, I personally hate Amazon so much because I lived in Seattle, which is the headquarters for Amazon, which is where fucking Bezos and his cronies live and built their fucking empire. And Amazon did so much damage to the local economy and the area around it, like bought out entire neighborhoods to put down their fucking warehouses and drove the cost of living and the cost of apartments and shit way, way higher. And the rest of the environment and society and shit around it couldn't recover from that. So I hate Amazon on a personal level. But I also hate Amazon as a business and their ethics and all of that additional shit that even if I hadn't lived in Seattle and had to deal with that on a local basis, if I had known about any of that shit, I would have never chose to use them. And I have friends who are disabled in terms of like mobility, where they can't go to the grocery store. They can't go to a department store. They have to rely on things being delivered to them. And Amazon, unfortunately, was a cornerstone in building delivery. That was one of the big things that they built their business on. Like the core tenets of what they built their business on was delivery. And they forced the local businesses to meet them at their level. So a lot of other industries changed the way they operate to build on delivery to make up for the fact that Amazon became a greedy little bastard company that was like, okay, we started with books, but now we can sell and we can deliver anything and everything as long as we have a distributor. As long as they're willing to pair up with us, we can get stuff delivered. We can get everything from food to books to exotic plants to car parts, all of that shit delivered to people at a reasonable price in a very quick turnaround and force the rest of everything around them to do that as well. So my friends who are mobile disabled rely on delivery, and Amazon might be the only place that actually delivers to them in their area. So they have to rely on things like Amazon and Walmart and other places like that that do delivery. I know for a while that Walmart was one of the few businesses that took EBT. That was especially hard during COVID because a lot of places didn't take EBT and didn't deliver. Like there were grocery chains that took EBT, but they didn't deliver. And situations like that are why things like Uber Eats and DoorDash and other places exist because they are able to deliver things that aren't necessarily deliverable before to people. Like, it used to be the only places that delivered food was fucking pizza places and Chinese food places. Now you can get anything and everything food-wise delivered to you. It used to be that you couldn't get EBT groceries delivered to your house, and then COVID happened, and then a bunch of people who were losing money because they couldn't do that service now do it, and Walmart was the pilot of that ability, that service. So, because that's the only thing that offers, maybe delivers in their area, maybe takes the ability things that they are able to do, I can't be mad at my friends who are in that situation for relying on a terrible business. They have no choice. In some cases, I have no choice. I moved to an area that is very culturally white. Let's put it that way. There aren't a lot of brown people here. And because there aren't a lot of brown people here, the food and the apparel and the activities kind of reflect that. So if I want those things, I have to find alternative means to get them, which means things like Amazon and learning online or going further away, which means having to spend the money to do that. And why does that relate to antinatalism? People who shouldn't be having children are still producing children, and I don't like that. And I can't tell people, "Hey, don't have kids," because um, that's very what's the word I'm looking for? I can't expect people that have the same morals and values and worldview as me, and trying to force people to do that would make me part of the problem. But that doesn't mean that I can't feel things about it, and that's how I feel. I feel like a lot of people, even people who can have children, who can afford to have children, who are willing to do all of the work to make sure that those children are set up for success and out there doing their best, I still feel like they shouldn't have them because the world is so running on fumes because of how poorly we've taken care of our resources and all of that shit. And I feel like having a child now, when we can't even guarantee that we can keep people alive, um, I feel like that's a shitty idea. And I especially struggle and suffer for that because of how hard it is for me. And I wouldn't wish that on a poor innocent child who had no choice. but the people producing that child definitely have a choice, and I think they should make the right choice. And I know that's a judgment, and I still have it, and I don't feel shitty about having it. And I respect people's wishes to have their own choices and their own opinions, and I will always fight for other people's ability to choose as long as it doesn't cause harm to others. And I feel like that's why I don't feel bad about being an antinatalist because you're causing harm to a child by putting them into a world that will not take care of them. And I'll leave it at that. So maybe let's do something fun. Because I've been doing this for just a little under 2 hours. I'm sure I'm exhausting everybody who's even still here. So I need to find something fun for us to do. Does anybody have any suggestions? I'm happy to read, and I probably will end up reading if there aren't any suggestions. In which case I need to open Steam so that I can get a Pomo started. That's fun to watch. So either way, let me get that started. Excuse me. Something somewhat fun to talk about as I start to do all of this. As I get a little closer to the monitor slash camera. Um, I need to put mute on my computer real quick, otherwise the mic might pick up stuff unintentionally. I should have done that at the beginning, but I forgot. Good thing I caught it now. Oh shit. Did Frostpunk get an update? It might have. Let me check real quick. Oh, damn. They did. They've had a couple updates, actually. That's cool. I'm gonna have to look into that a little bit more in a bit. Frostpunk is one of my favorite city planner games because it is rough. There's never even every decision has repercussions, and not all those repercussions are good. And I think it's very realistic. And even when you have a quote unquote good run, there's still choices that you made along the way that can be really hard and not wholly positive for everyone. So it's good in that way. I appreciate it. It's hard, and I appreciate that too. Do we want cars or do we want trains? I'm gonna do cars, I think, but if anybody has a preference, I will do trains instead. I could also do um, co-working, the On Together co-working, because I have that installed. If anybody else has On Together, I could set up a little thing where we could all hang out together. But that's okay if you don't. I'm gonna go ahead and do cars for now. But I also need to make sure that I can share my screen. So give me a second to get all that sorted. I'm gonna keep rambling in the meantime. Can you, nope, that's not what I wanted. I need to change it to windowed. I know that can be frustrating on the computer, but I don't know how to not do that. Oh, I don't think I can make it windowed. Oh, wait, max full screen? There we go. Oh, but that's really tiny. I wonder if it's still gonna look like that when I share the window. I guess it's worth trying, see what happens. Let me see. Okay, here we go. Oh, that is a little laggy. It's not as smooth as I would like. It's much more smooth on my side. Oop, there we go. Did I unshare it by accident? I might have. Let me try that again. Yep, it does look like I did. Here we go. Yes, 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 I know. I wonder if I'm able to adjust the frames. Hmm, doesn't really look like I can. Hmm. How do we feel about that, chat? Assuming anybody's still around. Do we like it? Do we not like it? I'm not sure. Seems fine. That's good. Mm. Ah, my sleeve got stuck on my keyboard. Stop it. I want to see really quickly how it looks, so I'm going to take a peek in my own stream. No, I don't have any audio on at the moment. It's just me. I don't even think I have it set up to have audio on. Yeah, I don't know if I like it. I like how it looks on my side, but I don't like um how it presents on the stream. So let's try trains, because I have a lot more control with trains. Will be just a second while I do that. I like trains. Uh, uh, uh. What are we going to call our current? Hang on. I need to actually share the damn. Give me a second. We're on the fly now, chat. Oh, goodness. That might be part of the reason it wasn't super good before, but that's okay. I didn't set it up for share to be 180p. All right. There we go. What do we want to call our destination? Suppose we could do reading. Reading's fine. I need to get Best of Charles Lint up on my phone in order to do that, but that's okay. I can do that. So let's do reading. We're gonna make it 30 minutes. I'm gonna turn the whistle on. It's pretty mild, the whistle. It won't be super bad. Quality. Low. Music is fine. SFX is fine. Yeah, I think that's good. Let me get the Let me get the thing open real quick. So maybe I'll make it a short one while I do that. Maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, probably good. 5 minutes to get book started for reading. We'll go with that first. It's a shorty, but that's okay. It'll be along in a minute. Alrighty. Make it a fast train. Come on. Is that the fastest I can go? Is it even fast though? Oh yeah, I appreciate that. It took a second to get fast, just like a real train. Nice. Okay, focus. Time to focus on getting this shit started. I hope that the audio is coming up. Oh, maybe that's too fast. Ah, fuck it, whatever. Momentito while I get the book out. I see some people who are lurking. Hello, lurkers. Thank you for popping in. I don't know how much of my shit you were hearing earlier, but that's also fine. Okay. It's archive, I believe. Another great resource. I love archive so much. They get a lot of crap because I would call them open source, but some of the things that they open source are still copywritten, and people are very protective of their IPs. And we already talked about that, so I won't go into it any further. Okie doke. I just need to switch over really quick to Storygraph to see where we left off on the book. I have way too many things open on my phone right now. So that's going to take me. See, it's probably good. Probably good that it was 5 minutes, right? Because that gives me 5 minutes to squirrel around. Storygraph. Where did we leave off on the best of Charles de Lint? 34%. Did I put a page number? 146. Excellent. Let's get over to the book. Let's borrow the book. Boopity boop. Cool. Now let's get to page 143. I think that's what I said, right? 146. Page 146. Give me one sec. Is the music coming in? Thank you for coming back from the ads. I can bookmark the pages. I did not realize I could do that. Good to know for next time. Hope the audio is coming in okay. I have my screen muted. Maybe having it muted means you can't hear it. I don't know. If somebody could let me know, that'd be great. If not, I can definitely turn it back on. Nope, that's not the right page. Getting closer. There we go. Page 146. Oh, but Was I in the middle of something when I stopped? I might have been. I don't know if I want to start it then if I was in the middle. Probably just jump ahead to the next one. I can't check because I don't have the can't just pop the VOD open and check. Oh my gosh. Let's do that. 1 hour is probably fine. I just got a notification from my phone that I need to take my meds, but I don't want to take them yet because I'm busy. Reminder, everybody, take your meds. Oh, looks like the 5 minutes is up, so that's good. Let's make an adjustment then so that we have a longer sprint this time. I am so, let me see if I can fix that. No. Oh, damn it. We're going rogue, Pat. I guess that's fine. 30 minutes is good for this one, right? 30 minutes reading feels like such a short amount of time considering how much I've been yapping. Make it 45 minutes. So it's not going to show up all on the screen, is it? I can put that in the thingy. $153. Okay. What was the other thing I wanted to add? Let's drop the speed down a little bit. I should pause it. There we go. Can I change it tonight? Is it going to let me change it tonight? Normally it does. It's not letting me. That's annoying. Oh, come on. There we go. That's what I wanted. Ooh, I like that. That's a good one. That's good quality. I thought I paused you. Don't be rude. There we go. Okay. So let's see. I'm gonna make a couple quick adjustments to stream itself. We're gonna change the category and as soon as I remember how to do that, there we go. Okay, that's done. And maybe we read until we feel done with reading. How does that feel? I thought there was a friggin' they didn't add it. Oh, here we go. There was an option to add stream marker with a comment, but I guess they don't do it on Stream Manager on the phone, which is annoying. Whatever. We have switched categories. We are now full send with reading. And now we can get back to the train ride. If there is anyone active in chat, can you tell me whether or not the audio is going? And so if it's not, I can turn it on. As it is muted on my side, but I don't know if it's muted on your side. Let me know. Otherwise, I guess it doesn't really matter. And I'm just going to get to reading. Okay, okay. Winter was hard. I pretty much try to stay in a constant state of confusion just because of the expression it leaves on my face. Johnny Depp. It was the coldest December since they first started keeping records at the turn of the century, though warmer, Jilly thought, than it must have been in the ice ages of the Philistine. The veracity of that extraneous bit of trivia gave her small comfort, for it did nothing to lessen the impact of the night's bitter weather. The wind shrieked through the tunnel-like streets created by the abandoned buildings of the tombs, carrying with it a deep Arctic chill. It spun the granular snow into dervishing whirligigs that made it almost impossible to see at times and packed drifts up against the sides of the buildings and derelict cars. Jilly felt like a little kid bundled up in her boots and parka, with long johns under her jeans, a woolen cap pushing down her unruly curls, and a long scarf wrapped about 50 times around her neck and face, cocooning her so completely that only her eyes peered out through a narrow slit. Turtle-like, she hunched her shoulders, trying to make her neck disappear into her parka, and stuffed her mittened hands deep in its pockets. It didn't help. The wind bit through it all as though unhindered, and she just grew colder with each step she took as she plodded on through the deepening drifts. The work crews were already out with their carnival of flashing blue and amber lights, removing the snow on Gracie's Street in Williamson. But here in the tombs it would just lie where it fell until the spring melt. The only sign of humanity were the odd little trails that the derelicts and other inhabitants of the tombs made as they went about their business, but even those were being swallowed by the storm. Only fools or those who had no choice were out tonight. Jilly thought she should be counted among that latter, though Gordy had called her the former when she'd left the loft earlier in the evening. "This is just craziness, Jilly," he said. "Look at the bloody weather. I've got to go. It's important. To you and the penguins, but nobody else." Still, she had to come. It was the eve of the solstice, 1 year exactly since the Gemin went away, and she didn't feel as though she had any choice in the matter. She was driven to walk the tombs tonight, never mind the storm. What sent her out from the warm comfort of her loft was like what Professor Dapple said when they used to call a geese in the old days, something you just had to do. So she left Gordie sitting on her Murphy bed, playing his new Copeland whistle, surrounded by finished and unfinished canvases and the rest of the clutter that her motley collection of possessions had created in the loft, and went out into the storm. She didn't pause until she reached the mouth of the alley that ran along the south side of the old Clark Building. There, under the suspicious gaze of the building's snow-swept gargoyles, she hunched her back against the storm and pulled her scarf down a little, widening the eye slits so that she could have a clearer look down the length of the alley. She could almost see Babe leaning casually against the side of the old Buick that was still sitting there, dressed in her ragged T-shirt, black body stockings, and raincoat, Doc Martens dark against the snow that lay underfoot. She could almost hear the high, husky voices of the other Gemins chanting an eerie version of a rap song that had been popular at the time. She could almost, but no. She blinked as the wind shifted, blinding her with snow. She saw only snow, heard only the wind, but in her memory. By night they nested in one of those abandoned cars that could be found on any street or alley of the Tombs, a handful of gangly teenagers burrowed under blankets, burlap sacks, and tattered jackets, bodies snugly fitting into holes that seemed to have been chewed from the ragged upholstery. This morning they had built a fire in the trunk of the Buick, scavenging fuel from the other buildings, and one of them was cooking their breakfast on the heated metal of its hood. Babe was the oldest. She looked about 17. There was something in the way she carried herself, but otherwise had the same thin, androgynous body as her companions. The other Gemin all had dark complexions and feminine features, but none of them had Babe's short mauve hair, nor her luminous violet eyes. The hair coloring of the others ran more to various shades of henna red. Their eyes were mostly the same electric blue that Jilly's were. That December had been as unnaturally warm as this one was cold, but Babe's open raincoat with the thin T-shirt and body stocking underneath still made Jilly pause with concern. There was such a thing as carrying fashion too far, she thought. Had they never heard of pneumonia? But then Babe lifted her head, her large violet eyes fixing their gaze as curiously on Jilly as Jilly's did on her. Concern fell by the wayside, shifting into a sense of frustration as Jilly realized that all she had in the pockets of her coat that day was a stub of charcoal and her sketchbook instead of the oils and canvas which were all that could really do justice in capturing the startling picture Babe and her companions made. For long moments none of them spoke. Babe watched her, a half smile teasing one corner of her mouth. Behind her the cook stood motionless, a makeshift spatula held negligently in a delicate hand. Eggs and bacon sizzled on the trunk hood in front of her, filling the air with their unmistakable aroma. The other Gemin peered up over the dash of the Buick, supporting their narrow chins on their folded arms. All Jilly could do was look back. Kind of vertigo licked at the edges of her mind, making her feel as though she'd just stepped into one of her own paintings, the ones that made up her last show, an urban fairy series, 12 enormous canvases, all in oil, one for each month, each depicting a different kind of mythological being transposed from its traditional folkloric rural surroundings onto a cityscape. Her vague, dizzying excuse me, her vague dizziness wasn't caused by the promise of magic that seemed to decorate the moment with a sparkling sense of impossible possibilities as surely as the bacon filled the air with its come-hither smell. It was rather the unexpectedness of coming across a moment like this, in the Tombs of all places, where winos and junkies were the norm. It took her a while to collect her thoughts. "Interesting stove you've got there," she said finally. Babe's brow furrowed for a moment, then cleared as a radiant smile first lifted the corners of her mouth, then put an infectious humor into those amazing eyes of hers. "Interesting, yes," she said. Her voice had an accent Jilly couldn't quite place, and an odd tonality that was at once both husky and high-pitched. But we, she frowned prettily, searching for what she wanted to say, make do. It was obvious to Jilly that English wasn't her first language. It was also obvious, the more Jilly looked, that while the girl and her companions weren't at all dressed properly for the weather, it really didn't seem to bother them. Even with the fire in the trunk of the Buick, the mild winter or not, they should still have been shivering, but she couldn't spot one goosebump. "And you're not cold?" she asked. "Cold is—" Babe began, frowning again. But before Jilly could elaborate, the dazzling smile returned. "No, we have comfort. Cold is no trouble for us. We like the winter. We like any weather." Jilly couldn't help but laugh. "I suppose you're all snow elves," she said, "so the cold doesn't bother you?" "Not elves. But we are good neighbors. Would you like some breakfast?" A year and 3 days later, the memory of that first meeting brought a touch of warmth to Jilly where she stood shivering in the mouth of the alleyway. Gemmin. She'd always liked the taste of the words, and that one had sounded just right for Babe and her companions. It reminded Jilly of Gummy Bear's thick cotton quilts and the sound that the bass strings of Gordy's fiddle made when he was playing at a fast reel. It reminded her of tiny bunches of fresh violets touched with dew, which still couldn't hope to match the incandescent hue of Babe's eyes. She had met the German at the perfect time. She was in need of something warm and happy just then, being on the wrong end of a 9-month relationship with a guy who, during those many months of their being together, turned out to have been married all along. He wouldn't leave his wife, and Jilly had no taste to be anyone's mistress, all of which had been discussed in increasingly raised voices in the monkey woman's nest the last time she saw him. She'd been mortified when she realized that a whole restaurant full of people had been listening to their break-in argument, but repentant. She missed Jeff, missed him desperately, but refused to listen to any of the subsequent phone calls or answer any of the letters that had deluged her loft over the next few weeks, explaining how they could work things out. She wasn't interested in working things out. It wasn't just the fact that he had a wife, but that he'd kept it from her. The thing she kept asking her best friend Sue was, having been with him for all that time, how could she not have known? So she wasn't a happy camper traipsing aimlessly through the tombs that day. Her normally high-spirited view of the world was overhung with gloominess, and there was a sick feeling in the pit of her stomach that just wouldn't go away. Until she met Babe and her friends. Gemmin wasn't a name that they used. They had no name for themselves. It was Frank Hodgers who told Jilly what they were. Breakfast with the Gemmin, excuse me. Breakfast with the Gemmin on the long-gone morning was odd. Jilly sat behind the driver's seat wheel of the Buick, with the door propped open and her feet dangling outside. Babe sat on a steel drum set a few feet from the car, facing her. 4 of the other Gemmen were crowded in the back seat. The 5th was beside Jilly in the front, her back against the passenger's door. The eggs were tasty, flavored with herbs that Jilly couldn't recognize. The tea had a similarly odd tang about it. The bacon was fried to a perfect crisp. The toast was actually muffins, neatly sliced in two and toasted on coat hangers, rebent to new shapes for that purpose. The Gemmen acted like they were having a picnic. When Jilly introduced herself, a chorus of odd names echoed back in reply. Mita, Emmy, Callio, Yoon, Perpsy, and Babe. Babe? Jilly repeated. It was a present from John DeFalco. Jilly had seen DeFalco around and talked to him once or twice. He was a hash dealer who'd had himself a squat in the Clark Building up until the end of the summer when he'd made the mistake of selling to a narc and had to leave the city just one step ahead of a warrant. Somehow, she couldn't see him keeping company with this odd little gaggle of street girls. DeFalco's taste seemed to run more into what her bouncer friend Percy called the 3 Bs: bold, blonde, and built, or at least it had whenever she'd seen him in the clubs. He gave you all of he gave all of you your names?" Jilly asked. Babe shook her head. "He only ever saw me, and whenever he did, he'd say, 'Hey, babe, how you doing?'" Babe's speech patterns seemed to change the longer they talked, Jilly remembered thinking later. She no longer sounded like a foreigner struggling with the language. Instead, the words came out easily, sentences peppered with conjunctions and slang. "We miss him," Perpsy, or perhaps it was Nita, said. Except for Babe, Jilly was still having trouble telling them apart. "He talked in the dark." That was definitely Emmy. Her voice was slightly high. "He talked in the dark." That was definitely Emmy. Her voice was slightly higher than those of the others. "He told stories to the wolves," Babe explained, "and we'd creep closer and listen to him." "You've lived around here for a while?" Jilly asked. "You, or was it Callio?" nodded. "All our lives." Jilly had to smile at the seriousness with which that line was delivered, as though, except for Babe, there was one of them older than 13. She spent the rest of the morning with them, chatting, listening to their odd songs, sketching them whenever she could get them to sit still for longer than 5 seconds. Thank goodness, she thought more than once as she bent over her sketchbook, for life drawing classes, and Albert Cora, her arts instructor at Butler U, who had instilled in her and every one of his students the ability to capture shape and form in just a few quick strokes of charcoal. Her depression and the sick feeling in her stomach had gone away, and her heart didn't feel nearly so fragile any more, but all too soon it was noon and time for her to go. She had Christmas presents to deliver at St. Vincent's Home for the Aged, where she did volunteer work twice a week. Some of her favorites were going to stay with family during the holidays, and today would be her last chance to see them. "We'll be going to excuse me, we'll be going soon too," Babe told her when Jilly explained she had to leave. "Going?" Jilly repeated, feeling an odd tightness in her chest. It wasn't the same kind of feeling that Jeff had left in her, but it was discomforting all the same. Babe nodded. "In the full moon When the moon's full, we'll sail away." "Away, away, away," the others chorused. There was something both sweet and sad in the way they half spoke, half chanted the words. The tightness in Jilly's chest grew more pronounced. She wanted to ask, "Away to where?" but found herself only saying, "But you'll be here tomorrow." Babe lifted a delicate hand to push back the unruly curls that were forever falling in Jilly's eyes. There was something so maternal in the motion that it made Jilly wish she could just rest her head on Babe's breast to be protected from all that was fierce and mean and dangerous in the world beyond the enfolding comfort that her motherly embrace would offer. "We'll be here," Babe said. Then, giggling like schoolgirls, the little band ran off through the ruins, leaving Jilly to stand alone in the deserted street. She felt giddy and lost, all at once. She wanted to run with them, imagining Babe as a kind of archetypal Peter Pan who could take her away to a place where she could be forever young. Then she shook her head and headed back downtown to St. Vincent's. She saved her visit with Frank for last, as she always did. He was sitting in a wheelchair by the small window in his room that overlooked the alley between St. Vincent's and the office building next door. It wasn't much of a view, but Frank never seemed to mind. "I'd rather stare at a brick wall any time than watch that damned TV in the lounge," he told Jilly more than once. "That's when things started to go wrong. With the invention of television, wasn't till then that we found out there was so much wrong in the world." Jilly was one of those who rather know what was going on and try to do something about it than those who preferred to pretend it wasn't happening and hoped that by ignoring what was wrong it would just go away. Truth was, Jilly had long ago learned that trouble never went away. It just got worse, unless you fixed it. But at 87 she felt that Frank was entitled to his opinions. That was the word I was looking for earlier. Entitlements. His face lit up when she came in the door. He was all lines and bones, as he liked to say, a skinny man made almost cadaverous by age. His cheeks were hollowed, eyes sunken, torso collapsed in on itself. His skin was wrinkled and dry, his hair just a few white tufts around his ears. But whatever ruin the years had brought to his body, they hadn't managed to get even a finger hold on his spirit. He could be cantankerous, but he was never bitter. She'd first met him last spring. His son had died, and with nowhere else to go, he'd come to live at St. Vincent's. From the first afternoon that she met him in his room, he'd become one of her favorite people. "You've got that look," he said after she'd kissed his cheek and sat down on the edge of the bed. "What look?" Jilly asked, pretending ignorance. She often gave the impression of being in a constant state of confusion, which was what gave her her charm, Sue had told her more than once. But she knew that Frank wasn't referring to that. It was the strange occurrences excuse me, it was that strange occurrences tended to gather around her. Mystery clung to her like the burrs on an old sweater. At one time when she was younger, she just collected folk tales and odd stories, magical rumors and mythologies, much like Gordy's brother Christy did, although she'd never published them. She couldn't have explained why she was drawn to that kind of story. She just liked the idea of what they had to say. But then one day she discovered that there was an alternate reality, and her view of the world was forever changed. It had felt like a curse at first, knowing that magic was real, but if she spoke of it, people wouldn't think her mad. People would think her mad. But the wonder it woke in her could never be considered a curse, and she merely learned to be careful with whom she spoke. It was in her art that she allowed herself total freedom to express what she saw from the corner of her eye. An endless stream of fairy folk paraded from her easel and sketchbook, making new homes for themselves in back alleys in city parks, on the wharves down by the waterfront, or in the twisty lanes of Lower Crosey. In that way she and Frank were much alike. He'd been a writer once, but "I've told all the tales I have to tell now," he explained to Jilly when she asked him why he'd stopped. She disagreed, but knew that his arthritis was so bad that he could neither hold a pencil nor work a keyboard for any length of time. "You've seen something magical," he said to her now. "I have," she replied with a grin, and told him of her morning. "Show me your sketches," Frank said when she was done. Jilly dutifully handed them over, apologizing for the rough state they were in until Frank told her to shush. He turned the pages of the sketchbook, studying each quick drawing carefully before going on to the next one. "They're gemmin," he pronounced finally. "I've never heard of them." "Most people haven't. It was my grandmother who told me about them. She saw them one night dancing in Fitzhenry Park, but I never did." The wistfulness in his voice made Jilly want to stage a breakout from the old folks' home and carry him off to the Tombs to meet Babe, but she knew she couldn't. She couldn't even bring him home to her own loft for the holidays because he was too dependent on the care that he could only get here. She'd never even be able to carry him up the stairs to her loft. "How do you know that they're gemmen and whatever are gemmen?" she asked. Frank tapped the sketchbook. "I know they're gemmen because they look just the way my gran described them to me. And didn't you say they had violet eyes?" "But only Babe had them." Frank smiled, enjoying himself. "Do you know what violet do you know what violet's made of?" "Sure. Red, blue." "Which symbolically stands for devotion and passion blended into violet. They're a symbol of memory." "That still doesn't explain anything." "Gemin are the spirits of places, just like the hogs are spirits of a house. They're what make a place feel good and safeguarded its positive memories. When they leave, that's when a place gets haunted feelings, and then only the bad feelings are left, or no feelings, which is just about the same difference." "So what makes them go?" Jilly asked, remembering what Babe had said earlier. "Nasty things happening. In the old days, it might be a murder or a battle. Nowadays, we can add pollution and the like to the list." "But—" "They store memories, you see," Frank went on. The one you call Babe is the oldest, so her eyes have been turned violet. So, Julie asked with a grin, does it make their hair go mauve too? Don't be imprudent. They talked some more about the Gemin, going back and forth between were they really? And what else could they be? Until it was time for Frank's supper and Jilly had to go. But first she made him open his Christmas present. His eyes his eyes filmed when he saw the tiny his eyes filmed when he saw the tiny painting of his old house that Jilly had done for him. Sitting on the stoop was a younger version of himself, with a small fawn standing jauntily behind him, elbows resting on his shoulders. "I've got something in my eye," he muttered as he brought his sleeve up to his eyes. "I just wanted you to have this today because I brought everybody else their presents," Jilly said, "but I'm coming back on Christmas. We'll do something fun. I'd come Christmas Eve, but I've got to work at the restaurant that night." Frank nodded. His tears were gone, but his eyes were still shiny. "The solstice is coming," he said. "In 2 days." Jilly nodded but didn't say anything. "That's when they'll be gone," Frank explained. "The gemmin, the moon'll be full, just like Babe said. Solstices are like May Eve and Halloween. The borders between this world and others is thinnest then." He gave Jilly a sad smile. "Wouldn't I love to see them before they go?" Jilly thought quickly, but she still couldn't think of any way she could maneuver him into the tombs in his chair. She couldn't even borrow Sue's car because the streets were too choked with rubble and refuse. So she picked up her sketchbook and put it in his lap. "Keep this," she said. Then she wheeled him off to the dining room, refusing to listen to his protests that he couldn't. A sad smile touched Jilly's lips as she stood in the storm, remembering. She walked down the alleyways and ran her mittened hands along the windshields of the Buick, dislodging the snow that had gathered there. She tried the door, but it was rusted shut. A back window was open, so she crawled in through it, then clambered into the front seat, which was relatively free of snow. It was warmer inside, probably because she was out of the wind. She sat looking out the windshields until the snow covered it again. It was like being in a cocoon, she thought, protected. A person could almost imagine that the Gemin were still around, not yet ready to leave. And when they did, maybe they'd take her with them. A dreamy feeling stole over her and her eyes fluttered, grew heavy, then closed. Outside, the wind continued to howl, driving the snow against the car. Inside, Jilly slept, dreaming of the past. The Gemin were waiting for her the day after she saw Frank lounging around the abandoned Buick outside the old Clark building. She wanted to talk to them about what they were and why they were going away, and 100 other things, but somehow she just never got around to any of it. She was too busy laughing at their antics and trying to capture their portraits with the pastels she brought that day. Once they all sang a long song that sounded like a cross between a traditional ballad and rap, but was in some foreign language that was both flute-like and gritty. Babe later explained that it was one of their traditional song cycles, a part of their oral tradition that kept alive the histories and genealogies of their people and the places where they lived. Gemin, Jilly thought, storing memories. And then she was clear-headed long enough to ask if they would come with her to visit Frank. Babe shook her head, honest regret in her luminous eyes. "It's too far," she said. Too far," the other Gemin chorused. "From home," Babe explained. "But," Jilly began, except she couldn't find the words for what she wanted to say. There were people who just made other people feel good. Just being around them made you feel better, creative, uplifted, happy. Gordy said that she was like that herself, though Jilly wasn't so sure of that. She tried to be, but she was subject to the same bad moods as anybody else, the same impatience with stupidity and ignorance which, parenthetically speaking, were to her mind the prime causes of all the world's ills. The gemin didn't seem to have those flaws. Even better, beyond that, there was magic about them. It lay thick in the air, filling your eyes and ears and nose and heart with its wild tang. Jilly desperately wanted Frank to share this with her, but when she tried to explain it to Babe, she just couldn't seem to make herself understood. And then she realized the time and knew she had to go to work. Art was well and fine to feed the heart and the mind, and so was magic. But if she wanted to pay the rent on the loft and have anything to eat next month, never mind the endless drain that art supplies made on her meager budget, she had to go. As though sensing her imminent departure, the gemin bound around her in an abandoned display of wild monkey shines, and then vanished like so many will-o-wisps in amongst the snowy rubble of the tombs, leaving her alone again. The next day was much the same, except that tonight was the night they were leaving. Babe never made mention of it, but the knowledge hung ever heavier on Jilly as the hours progressed, coloring her enjoyment of their company. The Gemmin had washed away most of the residue of her bad breakup with Jeff, and for that Jilly was grateful. She could look on it now with that kind of wistful remembering one held for high school romances, long past and distanced. But in its place they had left a sense of abandonment. They were going, would soon be gone, and the world would be that much emptier for their departure. Jilly tried to find words to express that, but as had happened yesterday when she tried to explain Frank's needs, she couldn't get the first one past her tongue. And then again it was time to go. The Gemin started acting wilder again, dancing and singing around her like a pack of mad imps. But before they could all vanish once more, Jilly caught Babe's arm. Don't go, she wanted to say, but all that came out was, I don't, I want. Jilly, normally never at a loss for something to say, sighed with frustration. We won't be gone forever, Babe said, understanding Jilly's unspoken need. She touched a long, delicate finger to her temple. We'll always be with you in here, in your memories of us, and in here. She tapped the pocket of Jilly's coat that held her sketchbook. In your pictures. If you don't forget us, we'll never be gone. It it won't be the same, Jilly said. Babe smiled sadly. Nothing is ever the same. That's why we must go now. She ruffled Jilly's hair. Again the motion was like one made by a mother rather than someone who appeared to be a girl only half Jilly's age, then stepped back. The other Gemin approached and touched her as well, feather-light fingers brushing against her arms, tussling her hair like a breeze, and then they all began their mad dancing and pirouetting like so many scruffy ballerinas, until they were gone. Jilly thought she would just stay here, never mind going into work, but somehow she couldn't face a second parting. Slowly she headed south, towards Gracie Street and the subway that would take her to work. And oddly enough, though she was sad at their leaving, it wasn't the kind of sadness that hurt. It was the kind that was like a singing in the soul. Frank died that night, on the winter solstice. But Jilly didn't find out until the next day. He died in his sleep, Jilly's painting propped up on the night table beside him, her sketchbook with her initial rough drawings of the gemin in it held against his thin chest. On the first blank page after her sketch of the gemin, in an awkward script that must have taken him hours to write, he'd left her a short note. I have to tell you this, Jilly. I never saw any real magic. I just pretended that I did. I only knew it through the stories I got from my gran and from you. But I always believed. That's why I wrote all those stories when I was younger, because I wanted others to believe. I thought if enough of us did, if we learned to care again about the wild places from which we'd driven the magic away, then maybe it would return. I didn't think it ever would, but I'm going to open my window tonight and call to them. I'm going to ask them to take me with them when they go. I'm all used up, at least the man I am in this world, but maybe in another world I'll have something to give. I hope they'll give me a chance. The fairy folk used to do that in the old days, you know. That was what a lot of the old stories were about. People like us going away beyond the fields we know. They take me. Don't be sad, Jilly. They'll be waiting for you there. Sorry. Oh, um that hit a little too close to home. Oh, give me a second, please. Oh, where did I put my tissue box? Oh, oh, there it is. I found it. Ah, oh, I did see your comment. I just can't see your full name on my screen. Assuming you're even still here. Uh, shit, hang on. Of course, it disconnected my chat when I put my phone away on a different screen. Ah, fuck. Just memes are. There you are. Yes, I did see your comment if you're still here. Let me pick up where I left off because I wasted a couple minutes getting into my feels there. Forgive me. Actually, don't forgive me. I have nothing to forgive. You have nothing to forgive me for. The script was almost illegible by the time he got near the end, but Jilly managed to decipher it all. At the very end, he'd just signed the note with an F with a small flower drawn beside it. It looked an awful lot like a tiny violet, though maybe that was only because that was what Jilly wanted to see. You saw real magic, she thought when she looked up from the sketchbook. You were real magic. She gazed out the window of his room to where a soft snow was falling in the alley between St. Vincent's and the building next door. She hoped that on their way to wherever they'd gone, the Gemmin had been able to include the tired and lonely spirit of one old man in their company. Sorry, I got a little emotional again. Sorry. Oh, I wasn't expecting this. I'm so sorry. I'm not sorry, but you know what I mean. Oh, take care of him, babe, she thought. That Christmas was a quiet period in Jilly's life. She had gone to a church service for the first time since she was a child to attend the memorial service that St. Vincent's held for Frank. She and Gordy and a few of the staff of the home were the only ones in attendance. She missed Frank and found herself putting him in crowd scenes in the paintings she did over the holidays. Frank in the crowds and the thin, ghostly shapes of Gemmin peering out from behind cornices and roof lines in the corners of alleyways. Often, oh, of course, looks like we might be running out of time. No, we have 5 minutes. Excuse me. Often, when she went out on her night walks after the restaurant was closed when the city was half asleep, she'd hear singing in the quiet snow muffled streets. Not an audible singing, something she could hear with her ears, but one that only her heart and spirit could feel. Then she'd wondered if it was the voice of Frank and Babe and the others she heard, singing to her from the far away, or that of the other gemmen not yet gone. She never thought of Jeff except with distance. Life was subdued, a hiatus between storms. Just thinking of that time usually brought her a sense of peace, if not completion. So why, remembering now, this time? There was a ringing in her ears, sharp and loud, like a thunder claps erupting directly above her. She felt as though she was in an earthquake, her body being violently shaken. Everything felt topsy-turvy. There was no up and no down, just a sense of vertigo, an endless spinning, a roar and whirl of shouting and shaking until she snapped her eyes open to find Gordy's worried features peering out at her from the circle that the fur of his parka hood made around his face. He was in the Buick with her, on the front seat beside her. It was his hands on her shoulders, shaking her, his voice that sounded like thunder in the confines of the Buick. The Buick. And then she remembered, walking in the tombs, the storm, climbing into the car, falling asleep. "Jesus, Jilly," Gordy was saying. He was he sat back from her, giving her a bit of a space, but the worry hadn't left his features. "You really are nuts, aren't you? I mean, falling asleep out here. Didn't you ever hear of hypothermia?" She could have died, Jilly realized. She could have just slept on here until she froze to death and nobody'd known until the spring thaw, or until some poor homeless bugger crawled in to get out of the wind and found himself sharing space with Jilly, the amazing dead woman. She shivered, much from dread as the storm's chill. How did you find me?" she asked. Gordy shrugged. "God only knows. I got worried the longer you were gone, until finally I couldn't stand it and had to come looking for you. It was like there was a nagging in the back of my head, sort of a lassie kind of thought, you know?" Julie had to smile at the analogy. "Maybe I'm getting psychic. What do you think?" he asked. Finding me. Shit, hang on. Finding me the way you did, maybe you are, Julie said. She sat up a little straighter, then realized that sometime during her sleep she had unbuttoned her parka enough to stick a hand under her coat. She pulled it out, and both she and Gordy stared at what she held in her mittened hands. It was a small violet flower, complete with roots. "Jilly, where did you—" Gordy began, but then he shook his head. "Never mind, I don't want to know." But Jilly knew. Tonight was the anniversary, after all. Babe or Frank, or maybe both of them, had come by as well. "If you don't forget us, we'll never be gone." She hadn't. And it looked like they hadn't either, because who else had left her this flower, and maybe sent Gordy out into the storm to find her? How else could he have looked upon her the way he had with all those blocks upon blocks of the tombs that he would have to stretch? "Are you going to be okay?" Gordy asked. Jilly stuck the plant back under her parka and nodded. "Help me home, would you? I feel a little wobbly." "You've got it." "And Gordy?" He looked at her, eyebrows raised. "Thanks for coming to look for me." It was a long trek back to Jilly's loft, but this time the wind was helpful rather than hindering. It rose up at their backs and hurried them along so that it seemed only to take them half the time it should have to return. While Jilly changed, Gordy made great steaming mugs of hot chocolate for both of them. They sat together on the old sofa by the window, Gordy in his usual rumpled sweater and old jeans, Jilly bundled up in 2 pairs of sweatpants, fingerless gloves, and what seemed like a half-dozen shirts and socks. Jilly told him her story of finding out about the gemmen and how they went away. When she was done, Gordy just said, "Wow, we should really tell Christy about them. He put them in one of his books." "Yeah, we should," Jilly said. "Maybe if more people knew about them, they wouldn't be so ready to go away." "What about Mr. Hodgers?" Gordy asked. "Do you really think they took him away with them?" Jilly looked at the newly potted flower on her windowsill. It stood jauntily in the dirt and looked an awful lot like a drawing in one of her sketchbooks that she hadn't drawn herself. "I like to think so," She said, "I like to think that St. Vincent's was on the way to wherever they were going." She gave Gordie a smile more sweet than bitter. "You couldn't see it to look at him," she said. "But Frank had violet eyes, too. He had all kinds of memories stored away in that old head of his, just like Babe did." Her own eyes took on a distant look, as though she was looking into the far away herself, through the gates of dreams and beyond the fields we know. "I think they're getting along just I'd like to think they're getting along just fine," she said. I'm gonna stop there. We're still a couple minutes out from the end of the ride, but, I might as well use that time to, reflect a little bit on what I just read. Oh boy, I was not expecting that. I was not expecting that at all. That was like a well calculated shot directly to my heart. Oh, for anybody who knows me personally, I have a very complicated relationship with death of my loved ones. Um, I I lost my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, who I was the closest to and who I loved deeply. Um, I lost her when I was out of state, and I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to her, and it still kind of lives with me. And it's one of those feelings that's been really hard for me to come to peace with, even though I had something of a head start to know that she was on her way out. Right after I found out that she was having quadruple bypass heart surgery, um, after searching the city and calling every single hospital I could find because I didn't get that information before my sister hung up on me. Um, I found her. I waited until she was out of the surgery, and then I had to wait until she was alert enough to take a phone call. And I was practically in hysterics when I talked to her, saying how scared I was and why she didn't tell me what was going on. We talked almost every single day, um, and I hadn't gotten a call from her that day, and now I knew why. And I was scared to death that something might have happened to her even before I got the call from my sister. Um, and I said that to my grandmother on the phone. I said, what if you died? What if I had never knew that you died?" Which was probably unlikely, but I was really distraught when I was talking to her. I'm never gonna forget this conversation for as long as I live. The phrasing might change a little bit as I start to lose the details, but I don't think I ever will forget the conversation, ever. So I told her how scared I was about what if she had died, and she said, um, "Even if I died, I'll always be with you. I'll always love you, and you'll never lose that." And oh my god, if that didn't hit me, if I wasn't already hysterical, that would have probably sent me over the edge. And I remember at the time I was like, don't say that, don't say that. That's not gonna happen. you don't have to say that because it's gonna be okay. We're gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be fine, and I'm gonna see you in a couple months after we figure out when exactly I'm gonna come, and it's gonna be great. And I miss you so much, and I love you so much." And she loved me too. She made sure that I knew that, and she really did. She really did. We talked a lot less as she um, got to the point where she was permanently hospitalized. She had gone in and out of hospice for a little while. Um, while she was healing, and she never healed fully. And she caught an infection at the surgery site that got through the rest of her, and ultimately she died because of that. And for a long time, I struggled. I thought it was the hospital's fault. Um, I even thought about pursuing that, but I still was at a state, and there was no way I was going to be able to prove it. And all of the work I would have had to do to prove it would not have meant anything. At the end of the day, she was gone, and no amount of money or time was ever going to fix that. And it was because of the way it was written in her will, that I was able to get the money that eventually got me back to the Pacific Northwest, where I lived in various states of happy and sad, until going to Seattle for school, and then finding my spouse and relocating to Arizona and growing older. And it's been a couple decades now, and I still think about her every day and how much I miss her. And I still cry every time I think about how much I miss her. So that hit me in a big way. I wasn't expecting it to hit me that hard, but it was a very beautiful little short story. And I'm not even shocked that my author, my favorite author, who I have followed on Facebook, and I very, very occasionally managed to string two words together enough to talk about to him. I mean, talk with him is what I meant to say. Who has struggled through a really hard death of his own in the recent years with the passing of his wife and his muse. He's still writing though. I need to find his recent work and read it. And I will be 100% devastated when he finally leaves this plane. But I will read all of his works over and over and over until I'm gone too. And it doesn't shock me even remotely that that story by him hit me so hard, because he's so good at what he does. He is a true wordsmith, and I will admire him and respect him forever, and hope maybe someday that I will be even remotely as good of a writer as him and be able to get my work published. But the first step is actually starting to write the words down. Original words of my own, using original characters that I've made, and putting out a story that people find interesting enough to read. And even if they don't. Anyway, I think I'm ready to get us on to another person to sit it with. I know there isn't a whole lot of people still here, and that's okay. It's late. I don't know where you are in the world right now, but it's definitely late here. So I'm ready to pass this on and hope that you'll come back with me later, and maybe I won't be so yappy next time. Or maybe I will. And whether or not you stick around is entirely your choice. let's see who is live. Probably one of my favorite ASM artists, which we will end up going into, but I need to find them first. Go on, go on, go on. Here we go. Can you please give me a minute? Don't make me go to sleep. I slept last night. Why do I keep having to go to sleep? Oh, Ema Jericho is live. I think we might go to him. Yeah, that sounds like a good choice. I don't see anybody else who's reading right now. Let's do that. Let's do that. Anybody who's still here, we're going to go into another reader's stream. This is another one that I found recently. His name is E. Jericho. He is a delightful elderly gent who reads. He's in the middle of reading The Witcher right now. The book, The Witcher, that the games are based on. And he will take very good care of us. I know that. So, as I often say, make sure to take care of yourselves, my dears. Drink some water, take your meds. Make sure that you get a chance to go out into nature, or at least outside your door, and take a big deep breath. And if you have any furry or feathered or scaly little beings in your lives, make sure to give them a hug and a kiss from me. Thank you so much again for coming and spending time with me. I hope I get to see you again in the near future. In the meantime, take care. Follow me on as we go to raid Ema Jericho, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.